Actually, this ends up being, I think I say it every year, this is going to be my favorite part. It's towards the end. We need a little Peter Schneider time. We need something good, Peter. He's been doing this for this will be his 11th year, or 10th year doing this. The first year we didn't do it. But Peter's been doing the closing talk, and usually has something that's thought-provoking and really closes it out well. So we're honored again to have Peter come up here and do the closing talk and take us home.
All right, so it is late in the day. Everybody's been working hard all day to learn as much as they can. What I thought might be worth doing, so about 5 years ago, I was the president of the Western Vascular, and I gave a talk. Actually, Ben was the one that really egged me on about this. And the talk I gave was about the future of vascular surgery. And of course, nobody can predict the future. But it gives you a minute to kind of think about, kind of where things are going. And not everything I'm going to tell you is going to be greeted with a sense of wonderful and amazing and heartfelt optimism. But I'm going to bring up a couple things that I think are coming. So this was my definition of vascular work: full spectrum, long-term relationships, difference in our patients' lives. Goals are practical. If A, then B, right? If dead, it hurts. If perfused, it's warm, pink, and fuzzy. The dilemmas are intellectually stimulating. The procedures include a lot of different techniques. It's anatomically based, aesthetically pleasing, technically challenging, and lots of opportunity for innovation. So I'm going to talk about major trends. Now, no matter how smart I get, I won't be as wrong as this guy, Steve Ballmer, when he said there's absolutely no chance the iPhone's going to get any market share. And so I figured no matter how wrong I am today, I'm probably going to be doing okay. Now, until we have one of these, I showed this slide once before. For those of you who haven't paid any attention to popular culture in the past 50 years, this is a tricorder. And once we have these, whatever trends and concepts and medications and things won't be important. Unfortunately, this slide comes sideways, so you're not going to get the full gist. But I just wanted to show you, this is health expenditures per capita, and this is the United States. And these are our competitors. So this wasn't on its side when I put it in, but I'll just show you. Here's China. Okay, a lot of people there. My kids have to compete with them for jobs. Healthcare is less than 10% of what it costs here. Here's India. Down here, even less. The Germans and the Japanese are right in here. So if you're building cars, healthcare starts out as twice as expensive. And so how is the industry responding? So this is from December of 2017. It's only 6 months ago. And this is all very small, but take a look at this. Horizontal, vertical, regional, national, large and small scale. 2017 was a year for mergers. 5 mega mergers announced in an 8-day period. And you look at these names: Advocate Health, CVS, Aurora Health, there's North Shore University, United Health, all the big players, or most of the big players are in here. And what we're seeing is that payers are becoming providers. And we're also seeing that Amazon is now interested, since it's 18% of the economy. And I know you Seattle people, you love Amazon, but the rest of us are very leery of Amazon. Because imagine when Amazon knows more about your own health than you do, and they will eventually, because they'll not only know where you shop and what you buy, they'll know what your test results are eventually. So what are doctors doing about it? Well, this is an AMA survey. So between 2007-8 and 2012, so roughly a 5-year period, it went from about 60% of doctors owning their own practices to 50%. And that was 5 years ago. So I can only assume that the number is changing rapidly in that direction. And incidentally, when you survey physicians about why they went to work, for a larger company, and I have worked for a larger company, so I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong or anything like that. But the most common reasons cited in surveys in the past 5 years have been inability to afford health care for their staff. That's super important to me because that means we can't actually afford what we're producing. So let me just throw in a couple of other things. So world life expectancy. Alec Farber and I were talking about this today at lunch because apparently we have nothing better to do. But if you look at this life expectancy in the, several centuries ago, you're talking superstition, witchcraft, hearsay, then came germ theory, sanitation, research, specific treatments. 2/3 of the people in world history who have reached the age of 65 are alive right now. So the world really doesn't know what to do with all these people. It's never happened before. So let's just dig into this. I know we throw around this concept of Medicare because we're familiar with it. These are our people, but let's just look at the numbers here really quick. 65 and over age group will grow 28% in the next decade. 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every day. This is going to continue for the next 12 years. 25% of Medicare recipients are on have 5 or more chronic conditions, see 13 or more physicians per year, and fill 50 prescriptions per year. 50% of Medicare recipients have an income below $26,000 a year. This is all super useful because if you told your average Medicare recipient, hey, tell you what, this operation I'm going to do, it's worth 3 times your net worth. Some of them might have a pause about that. And so this concept of having the cost really disconnected from what we're doing it's really coming to the forefront. And we've heard stuff about this for years, but I think actually we're there. I'm feeling when you look at what's happening in the hospital industry and what's happening among the choices that physicians are making, again, it's not the kind of thing where we ought to necessarily be depressed. This is just what's happening, and it also creates a lot of opportunities, so we're going to talk about that. In any event, in 1965, workers supported every person over the age of 65. In 2025, it'll be 2 workers. So this is what you hear a lot about. How are we going to deal with these challenges? Now, this concept, everybody heard this concept, volume-based versus value-based? Try to get someone to define that concept. It's just another sort of pleasant way of saying, like, we're in charge now. When someone says that, I think that's what it is. I can't think of another good definition for it, but I think what this is saying is that every chance we get, we need to show our value, whether it's with numbers, whether it's with our connections with the patients, whether it's our contribution to making what we do safer, more successful. But I think this concept is going to be way bigger than the open versus endo discussion. That's just going to seem like low-level activity. And this is the McKinsey company. This is the other big movement that's happening, I think a little bit without our input, without our knowledge perhaps, is this concept that, and you might have noticed this, that for the first time really in my lifetime, the patients are actually having to pay a lot of their own bill. And they have a lot of questions, many of which I cannot answer. The other thing that's happening among the big companies, this is McKinsey, big consulting company, is healthcare consumerism. So I think that the powers that be are sort of envisioning that there are going to be companies like Angie's List, where people look up and this is how they decide where they're going to go. And to prove that to me, what they did here was a survey showing that not that many people are attached to their pharmacy, their insurance company, their PCP, their hospital system, and as you go down the row, it gets even less attachment. And I think the key thing there is that now it's a kind of a transitory system. So this potential for consumerism is definitely there. Now this is the not as good part. You guys probably saw this. New York Times, September 6, 2017, overtreatment is common. And this is a study where physicians filled out a survey and they talked about all the things that they thought were sort of overdone, including 11% of procedures And the first thing that gets mentioned in all of these things is blood vessels in the legs. So we have to be really specific about who we're treating and why, and this is why I think treatments for claudication are going to come under greater scrutiny. Critical limb is much more clear, in my opinion, about who needs what. But this was the one that came right before it. I'm sure you guys remember, you all remember this, is New York Times, January 2015. And in this one, this had shown an example of a person in Florida who had billed Medicare $18 million and had basically a 1-to-1 ratio between diagnostic tests and procedures, which, that's too high a ratio in my opinion. In any event, the article got a lot of things wrong, but it sure got a lot of people upset. And so the reason why I bring these things up is because on some level, we have to kind of answer for it. Well, even as individuals sometimes, but certainly as a group. And then the other key thing is this is a worldwide phenomenon, not just in the United States, but cardiovascular death rates are dropping dramatically in the US. Here's what the trend looks like. Cancer death is dropping dramatically and the number of cancer survivors is increasing. At the same time, we have more diabetes and more renal failure, which means it's not going to be rocket science to figure out that we're going to be treating a lot more distal beds. And so whether it's with endo or with bypass or with whatever else we come up with, this concept of figuring out how to manage the distal beds. Here's another one that came on its side, but let me just show you that where we are compared to our friends, these are very well-developed countries and well-developed economies. And here we are at 17.1 amputations per 100,000 due to diabetes. So we have our work cut out for us. I mean, it's a little, I wish we weren't so high on the curve, but it also means that we have a huge opportunity there. So what about how vascular disease reflects socioeconomic status? So this is a very nicely done study. This poverty income ratio, if you're less than 1, you're below the poverty line. And you can see how the PAD prevalence decreases with increasing income, or how your income compares to the poverty line. And PAD prevalence decreases with more education. College graduates and above have less. We also have this global epidemic of diabetes. This is projection for 2025 in the US, 10 to 14% of population. So again, it's an opportunity for us to treat, to manage, to take care of, to come up with systems of care, and to look for ways that we can do things that will impact patients' lives. And vascular disease has truly become an international problem, and this is the prevalence of diabetes worldwide. It's gone from 4.7 to 8.5% between 1980 and 2014. So anything that we come up with, anything reasonable that we come up with that helps to treat and manage vascular disease and its complication in diabetics, we have a potential to reach well beyond our immediate surroundings. And just to prove that vascular disease is truly an international disease, I want you to know that when they did CAT scans on the 52 mummies that were from between 1500 and 2000 BC, that 20 of them had vascular disease. Here's an aortoiliac, and here's a carotid. Fascinating, huh? Apparently it was an atherogenic diet combined with indoor smoke, is a kind of the theory. Indoor, fires and that sort of thing. Anyways, so here, this from Lord Kelvin, President of the Royal Society, 1883, X-rays will prove to be a hoax. And 100 years later, you can't function without one of these. But only 20 years after that, we can't do anything without complex imaging. In fact, I don't even think you can get in and out of the emergency room without complex imaging. And right or wrong, that's the next generation. It's getting faster, safer, less expensive, and people are going to be continuing to get better and better imaging. And I'll come back around to why that's important. Another issue that has yet to be solved is this concept of radiation exposure. It's a generational issue because I think ultimately it'll lead to guided therapy. But there is this concept out there. This is in cardiologists, that there's a higher incidence of left-sided brain tumors. It's all still very anecdotal. Of course, people are right-handed, so they have their left hemisphere toward the image intensifier. But it's anecdotal at this point in the sense that of the 25 cases in cardiologists that were collected, 21 of them were on the left side and 4 of them were on the right side. But I think nevertheless, it's going to lead to guided therapy. And I think I saw a little bit of that today, this concept of doing, your own Dyna-CT or having your own roadmap prior to the procedure that will guide you. But I think over time it's going to become interactive. And actually the tools are there now. They just haven't yet been applied to vascular. So there are 1 billion transistors in my iPhone. I'm still using catheters and 2D fluoroscopy like I was 25 years ago. I mean, the catheters are slightly better. The fluoroscopy is way better, but nevertheless, it's the same basic tools. And I think those are about to change. And I think it's going to be exciting. Now, what about open surgery? I mean, I started out by saying we're fix-it people. That's what we do. But the key thing is not to get wedded to any one technique or another, because that's where trouble starts. But this is my own prediction. I think open surgery is mostly going to go away in the next 20 years. If you look at the trajectory of the last 20 years, I think this is probably where we're going. I think there still will be some cases. I think there are things like common femoral occlusions that are uncommon enough and yet difficult enough to manage with endo. I think the most diffuse disease may be task F, if you will, if such a thing existed. Multiple endo failures, hybrid procedures, emergencies. We're going to go back to where we started. Vascular started as something to control trauma or to answer the vagaries of when accidents occur, and I think we'll still be doing that. But I think it's a particular challenge for vascular surgeons because it's part of our identity. So we have to sort of figure out what to do about that. We're in a kind of a slow burn identity crisis, as you know. But maybe that's just the vagaries of living in a modern world with lots of opportunities. But let me just show you that in this survey, which is already now 7 years old, 70% of vascular surgeons performed endovascular for anywhere from half to 3/4 of their cases, and 22% performed endovascular for between 3/4 and 100%. So this is a nationwide thing. So of course in each practice things may vary quite a bit, but I think that's just where we are. And I think there are a couple of other trends with occlusive disease. I think the era of drug delivery is here. It's early yet, as I mentioned before, but I think that we're going to see things like Lima's drugs, nanoencapsulation of drugs for easier delivery, use in the tibials, which is really going to change what we can do there, use in dialysis, calcified arteries, post-atherectomy. I think the rebirth of drug-eluting stents is right around the corner based on the success of drug-coated balloons. And here's just an example of sirolimus delivery by this is a kind of a startup company, but I think there are a lot of mechanisms now. And I think, as you know, based on the presentations of today and all that we've seen in the last couple years, that a total relining of the large vessel, we know small vessel is going to go medical. Large vessel, I think, will probably, we have some more mechanical work to do there, but I think yet to be solved ascending aorta, spinal cord, and endo leaks, and of course cost. But I think if you look at where we were 10 years ago on large vessel and where we are now, it's really kind of shocking how much progress there has been, and how much excitement there is around the world. Another big thing that we should keep our eye on is this concept of remote monitoring. In 2018, CMS started to reimburse for remote monitoring. And it's not that we're all going to go out and start monitoring things remotely right at this minute, but what that serves as a stimulation for startups and other companies and sometimes big industry to begin programs. And these are just two companies that I've been helping. One has an injectable oxygen sensor where it's a microsensor and a hydrogel. You inject it into the foot of a critical limb patient. Eventually they'll be able to wave their iPhone. They should be able to wave their iPhone over their foot and tell you what their reading is and call you and tell you, or even put it in online. And eventually after that it'll be remotely monitored and it'll go directly from their iPhone to the cloud. I'm also involved with a company that has a watch that measures heart rate and rhythm, and it's really for triathletes and people who've had AFib and other people who may at some point need an ablation or who've had an ablation to understand whether it's been efficacious. Continuous monitoring, even while the person's asleep. No Holter, no leads, no connection, straight to the cloud. And here are just some examples, and a lot of this stuff exists. It just hasn't yet been applied to where we live, and it's about to be. And there's no possible way you're going to be able to read this, but let me just tell you the reason why I put this in here. Top 10 remote patient monitoring companies. This is for hospitals. I love the names. This is a boring one, Biotronic Home Monitor, but check this out. Latitude, NXT, Apex Pro, Genesis Touch, Vital Sync, Aware. You get the idea. Sounds like it could be golf clubs or possibly an app for where to party, something like that. And what these are is remote monitoring, and these are big companies. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this because they see big possibilities. There's no way that this won't affect us, and probably it will affect us in a very positive way, in my opinion. I'd say half the patient visits I have could be eliminated by remote monitoring, maybe more. It'd probably be better than me sitting with the patient and being inaccurate than having a sensor that's actually saying what's going on. And you could spend the day on this, but I would just really strongly suggest that you keep an eye on this. You've heard this mentioned. The applications for machine learning, there's so much random activity among us and among our patients that the opportunity for machine learning, for everything we do has a learning curve, but with people like me, it also has a forgetting curve. With machine learning, you get rid of the forgetting curve. And let me just explain some of the ways that this is going to be applied. So imagine, like just with this concept of the watch that's constantly monitoring someone's heart rate. Well, if it's monitoring thousands of patients, they're going to be able to tell you what are the risky patterns and what aren't, other than our simple way of looking AFib versus not AFib. With this oxygen sensor that I've been working on, you get all of this incredible flux and random association of data through the day and night. And with big data, you really could figure out probably what are the signals that you should be looking for. So imagine if this stuff gets plugged into the electronic health record. It'll make what you can do click by click by click look like a complete waste of time. Google has a Fountain of Youth project going on that's top secret, but you read little snippets about it. Facebook, I don't know what they have going on, but they're investing. Amazon definitely is. They're kind of under the radar a little bit. The IBM Watson program is going to have a big, I think, ultimately a pretty big impact. And I think a lot of the things that we do where we're going, gee, should we do surveillance once a year or once every 2 years? These are not even going to be questions, because I think ultimately, eventually, these things will be answered by big data that's going to the cloud on a continuous basis. I think the opportunities with that are huge. So I know I threw a lot of things at you, but I'm thinking, okay, what are the trends that are going to affect us? Even the ones that look like possibly unhappy ones aren't necessarily bad. It's just what's happening. And the question is, where's the opportunity in it? Where's the opportunity for us, for our patients, to make vascular better than it's ever been? So I think in conclusion, there really is no conclusion. It's a process. It's just happening faster and faster. The day-to-day seems the same, but the tectonic plates are moving. When you see like 5 mega mergers in a week, that really says something about where people think we're going. I think they're going to be dramatic new opportunities, but I think we just can't forget that ultimately we are fix-it people, and we can't get wedded to one technique or technology or another. We have to be there to provide full spectrum care and to manage our patients and to make long-term relationships with our patients and to continuously look for ways to innovate. One thing I didn't do was tell what I read this year that I thought would be, that people might like. These were my 2 favorites. This was maybe one of the best books I've read in 10 years. If you haven't looked at it, you should take a look. This is the history of humankind, and it's written in an absolutely brilliant way. It'll challenge most of the things you've thought about in terms of history and how we got here. And this is a very uplifting book. This is the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. I can guarantee you he is working way more than 4 hours per week, this guy. But, and this is a fantastic book because it surveys essentially entrepreneurs from around the world and gets their advice on what I should do next, kind of thing. So that makes it really fun. Anyways, that's what I had to say, and I'd be happy to discuss it with anybody that has questions. A little different than the usual, but again, I think big trends are happening right now. And the more we recognize them, think about what the opportunities are, I think, then the happier we'll be about it. Thanks.